The Judge Spotlight, episode number 13. Hey everybody, what's up? Jani Lunga here and welcome to the 13th episode of the Judge Spotlight podcast. I hope you're having a great day and a great week. I'm sure having a great week and I'm super excited about this new episode. The title of this episode is Effective Booking and Tour Planning, and I'm very excited because we have a special guest here who talks about booking and planning. So if you're, planning your next tour or you would like to, organize some gigs, whether it's in your city or in some other country even, this episode is going to be very useful to you. Before I go more into details about this episode, I want to thank all the subscribers of the newsletter. Thank you very much for being part of the Judge Spotlight community, and I hope you're getting great value from the weekly newsletter and the content and tips I share with you. And if you haven't signed up for the newsletter and you would like to be part of the Judge Spotlight community, you can do so by going to thejudgespotlight.com/toolbox, and you can get also a free ebook by signing up, and you will get once a week an email filled with value, tips, resources that you can use to take your career to the next level and find new opportunities. So, as I was saying, today we talk about effective booking and touring planning. And in a way, this episode relates to last week's episode. If you remember, on episode 12, I had Steve Pelfreman here on the podcast, and he told us about how to build and grow an online audience for your music. So after talking about how to build and grow an audience, we're going to talk about what in a way is the next step. So about booking gigs, and how to plan a tour in an effective way. And if you have any questions, like always, you can reach me by email if you go to thejudgespotlight.com/contact, or you can also give a shout out on social media on Twitter @JudgeSpotlight or Facebook or Google+, whatever it's your favorite platform. You feel free to give a shout out. And like always, if you think this episode is useful for you, or you know someone that can be benefit from it, make sure to share the link thejudgespotlight.com/episode 13 with your friends, with your audience, with whoever you think could benefit from this episode. So this is Jeri Goldstein with Effective Booking and Touring Planning. Enjoy. Hey everybody, what's up? Jani Lunga here from the Judge Spotlight podcast, and welcome to another episode. I hope you're having a great week. I'm having a fantastic week, and I'm really excited about today's episode because it's something that I'm sure is going to be very interesting and, most importantly, very useful for many of you who are artists. The topic of today is about how to be your own booking agent. You might remember from episode 7, we had Ezra Brown on the show who talked about touring the world. He shared his story, the way he plans his tour, the tools he uses, the way he promotes himself when he's touring. And today we're gonna still in the topic of touring, but we're gonna focus more on the business side of it. My guest is a great author. She is a former booking agent, artist manager with 20 plus years of experience. She's the author of the winning book, How to Be Your Own Booking Agent, and she's also an artist development coach. It's with great pleasure that I welcome on the show Jeri Goldstein. Hey Jeri, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing? It's evening for you and morning for me.
Yeah, I'm fantastic. Yeah, it's late afternoon, early evening here, and to you is it 11 o'clock, 11:30?
Yeah, about lunchtime here.
All right. So, Jeri, tell us a little bit, what are you up to these days? What is it that you do with your coaching programs?
Well, I've been working with artists for now 15, going on 20 years, just outside of the booking. I had done 20 years of booking agent work and management work, and now have really transformed what I used to do for about five acts into working with artists all around the world, in all genres of music as well as all different fields. I work with some writers, I work with some chefs, I work with a variety of people, but mostly musicians, in all different genres of music, to help them transform what they are hoping to be a full, vibrant, exciting, long term artistic touring career.
All right. Already your first words are have full of potential for our listeners, because we talk about successful touring career, and I see from your website performingbiz.com there is so much on your website, so many great things, your coaching programs, your books, some guides, some tools, like plenty of things to talk about. So we have so much on our plate. So the first question I have for you is, tell us a little bit about your book, How to Be Your Own Booking Agent. What can people expect from the book?
Okay, well, basically, I wrote the book after 20 years of being a booking agent, and all these artists were asking me how to do various parts of that task, book themselves. And I sat down and spent about 2 years creating this book that covers everything from, I think I'd like to have a performing career, and what does that entail, setting goals and understanding your true dreams, and how do you take that, and all it goes all the way up to when to quit my day job in case you're not doing it full time. And in between those pages and those chapters, I've got everything from how to negotiate, how to create contracts, um, all kinds of media, how to deal with print media, radio media, other broadcast medias, how to work with a booking agent if you don't want to do it yourself, or if you're ready for a booking agent, how to work with management, how to work with record companies if you're not doing it on your own, and how to create appropriate press materials and marketing materials. And all of that fills those pages, including how to go to conferences and trade events for your particular area of art or interest, and even how to work to tour in other countries, and in particular, from the U.S. perspective, how to tour in Canada, and Canada, how to tour in the U.S. But a lot of that translates to how do you get into the U.S. if you are a foreign artist wanting to work with and have a visa situation.
That's actually great.
It's a lot of stuff in that book. It ended up being about 500 pages, but has become one of Amazon's top music business books for touring musicians. And I'm very excited about it.
So for everyone who's listening, Jeri Goldstein, How to Be Your Own Booking Agent, go check it out, because there's plenty of useful tips. Some of it we're gonna hear about it today. So my first question for you is about website, because nowadays almost, or let's say most of the artists have a website. Those who are listening who perhaps don't have a website, make sure to have one, because it's the cornerstone of online promotion. And on the website they have pictures, videos, social media statuses, and what's not. In the booking and touring perspective, what are the features you think artists should have on the website?
Well, one of the first pieces of understanding that an artist who wants to book themselves or get booked for doing the concerts or the programs that they do, is the first thing that they really need to understand is, well, who are you talking to? Who is your intended audience? Most websites and any artist who's listening to this, if they go to their website after you finish listening to this and look at who is that website geared towards? Is it a fan-based website? Is the first thing that you see the Buy My CD display on the website? You need to first understand who are your intended audience members and what is it that you want this website to do for you. So most often artists will say to me, I want to get more gigs. I want to play here or there. I want to tour Europe. I want to tour the US. I want to tour across the country. Whatever it is that they want to do, they want to get more festivals. They want to be booked at performing arts centers or jazz clubs. Whatever their goal is, and if you look at the website, most often the website does not talk to bookers or festival artistic directors or performing arts center programming personnel. It basically talks to fans. Mm-hmm. So you have to understand what you want the function of your website to do and how you want it to work for you to get you what you want to have happen. You're going to get more fans if you have more gigs. So if you're going to focus on getting the gigs, you'll be able to sell more CDs and get more fans because you'll be playing more. But if you want to focus on just your fans, it's not going to do the work you need it to do to get the gigs. So the question is, do you have definitions or descriptions of the types of programs that you're doing? Now, other musicians might say, well, I'm a musician. And if you look at my website, you probably can listen to my music and you can see that I play concerts. But you have to understand, you can't assume that a festival director knows that you're right for their festival because you have not told them anything on your website about what it is that you do or what you can do for them. That's the biggest thing. You know, yes, you're a musician. Yes, you might play jazz. Yes, you might play bluegrass. Yes, you might play hard rock. But what can you do for me if I'm a performing arts center director or a student activities director or a festival director or a jazz nightclub owner? What are you going to tell me about yourself that I can use to say, oh, I want to book you instead of the other guy? So what I try to do with artists is to get them to create descriptive pages about what they offer. You know, maybe you are a fabulous jazz guitarist. Well, can you do a master class at a university? Tell me about that. Maybe you developed a really unique style of playing whatever instrument you play, and that's of importance. And maybe the program that you can do for me on a college campus, at a festival, you know, maybe you could be part of a panel of musicians talking about jazz rhythms. But I don't know that by just looking at a website that just assumes that I know what you do. So any artist that looks at their website, if you do not have a tab or a navigation bar with a link to the programs that you offer, what do you do? Tell me about what you do. The other piece of the website that one has to think about is think about who is going to be looking at it. You know, are you going to have, if an artistic director is your goal, if you want them to look at it, think about their age. Think about what kinds of things they need in order to book you. You know, do you have a page that gives them resources to your stage plot, a downloadable PDF of your stage plot, downloadable PDF of your sound or tech requirements, maybe another, some very good photos, not the gallery where you have all your pictures of when you were on stage with this one and that one and all the microphones are in front of your face, but an actual place that you have your specific downloadable JPEGs of your really good promotional photos.
And would you put, sorry to interrupt you, would you put these informations on the about page, or would you recommend to create a separate section on the website?
Separate. I would create a separate page or a separate link that has booking resources. The specific items that people who are booking you need to use to sell you or to promote you, and or to just see what it is that you have to offer me, and are you a right fit for my venue. So those are really important, just a couple of important pieces, but any artist right immediately can go to their website right now, and you can look at your website and see whether that website is geared toward booking you. I mean, are you talking to the promoters that need specific information? Are you making it easy for them to get the information they need to both book you and then to turn around and to sell you? And one of the other pieces of this puzzle is, like, let's say you're an artist and you're not well known. Your name is not a household name. You're not Miles Davis right now. You might be aspiring to be following in those footsteps, but the reality is that you are an up and coming artist. So let's think about, if your name is not going to sell you, perhaps some of the programs that you do might sell you. Let's say you concentrate on jazz standards, for instance, and you're a vocalist. Maybe you can come up with a program that is jazz standards from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and give it a clever name and make it really enticing. Well, a booker might like that program and might book you because you're doing an interesting program, but they may not really know who you are. But they can sell the program to their audience, even though they can't necessarily sell you. So by creating interesting programs that are appropriate for your target audience, you might be able to increase the number of gigs that you get by doing that, rather than focusing on playing a lot of freebie type, showcase type gigs that really don't help you in the long run. So think about that as you're looking at your website. How can you describe some of the, how can you take what you do normally? Like, let's say you do an evening of music, and that whole evening you've actually covered, specific composers or specific artists that you like their music and you do their music really well. Or, but we don't know that. So if you can take some of those pieces that you normally do on a regular basis and just put it together and call it something, call it a show, from Coltrane to Davis, whatever you want to do to make it interesting, that it's sellable. That's going to help a huge amount.
And would you put, let's say, for example, an up and coming artist had already some workshop at an important festival?
Yes.
Do you think that should be on that section, so to say that I had masterclass at the Jazz Festival ABC in 2005? Should one put it?
Yeah, I would actually delineate the tabs by saying featured gigs or featured performances, and have like either a listing or a visual, interestingly visual presented description or listing of previous performances that you've played, so that somebody can go there and at a glance they could see an overview of your previous career, as opposed to having just paragraph and paragraph and paragraph where you throw in names of places where you played, but somebody has to read a lot of it.
Mhm.
The idea here is that if when venue promoters get emails with a link to somebody's website, and if they go there and if the information is all buried in long paragraphs, they're not going to read it. They're not going to spend time on it. You've got to think about them from their perspective. Years ago, when people mailed promo packets to promoters, they would have stacks and stacks of promoters of promo packets in their office, and if they opened it up and they saw tons and tons of paper and reviews and all this other stuff, they would go through it very quickly and cast it aside. Well, now we have websites and other social media sites that if you're sending somebody to your website, you want them to have immediate accessibility to the important bits of information that you want them to know. So if you have a really long page with a whole lot of stuff on it, they're never going to get down to the bottom. So if you separate your pages and have programs, and on the programs maybe you have one testimonial or two testimonials about how great that program was, and then a link on that page to your booking resources, like your downloadable photos and technical requirements and stage plots, but have another tab that has a link directly to the resources of your downloadable stuff. Have another link that is a workshop link. And then on that workshop link, you can describe the workshops and say who these workshops are good for. These workshops or master classes are good for universities or festivals, or, in that way, people who are the bookers, and that they can see themselves reflected in your information. It's like you're talking directly to them. This is good for this kind of audience. Oh, I'm a festival director. This would be a good program for my festival next year.
Mhm. No, it's very true. I agree with you, and I think it's important to emphasize what you've said. So, people, if you have a website, after listening to this episode, spend a moment to look at it and put yourself in a festival director shoes or jazz club owner shoes, and try to think if your website is thought, is written, is designed for this kind of people and not only for fans. So what Jeri's just talked about, this booking section, so where you put what you can offer, for example, master classes, workshops. If you have had in the past if you have held some of these in the past, to put it, featured gigs. And what Jeri said, I think it's very important to keep in mind that today web users, they don't read that much anymore. People tend to scan more and more often. So keep this in mind when you write pages, for example, also for your about page, because like she said, if you have a very long text on your page, people, if you're lucky, are gonna scan it through, but in most cases they will just go to another website. So make sure, as Jeri said, to have visually divided content and also visually well organized and appealing in a sense. And is there something else, Jeri, that you think people should think about when it comes to their websites?
Yeah, one other item that now, video is so prevalent in so many areas online, that I think it's also important to not only have an excellent video representation of what you're doing, whether it's a live performance, but the so often I'll see people having a link or sharing a video that they placed on YouTube that the audio is poor. and they think that that's doing themselves, a big some good. And I think that it's important to realize that just because you have a video doesn't mean it's a good video. Just because you have a photo doesn't mean it's a good photo. So be really go in there and edit. Go in there and make sure that if you want a really good video to represent what you do, that you take the time to make a good video. Don't just use something that has been shot from the back of the theater or the club and then throw it up on the website thinking that it's doing you any favors, because in most cases it could be more harmful than helpful. And don't forget about maybe making a video that you talk directly to the intended booker and say some of the stuff that you might have written. Talk about what it is that you do. That's very compelling and engaging, and it really captures the attention of the viewer in this day and age when video is so easy to put together now, that might be even more helpful to discuss all the things that you offer, and then have some examples of the actual art and the actual presentation.
I totally agree, and I think it's very true what you said about the importance of thinking before uploading content online.
Right.
And this is something that also Christoph de Gelt on episode 8, when we talked about music management, he talked about he was talking about the quality of videos in particular. So to always keep in mind that when you upload something, you don't know who's gonna look at it.
Right.
So you upload a picture thinking that only your fans are gonna see it, but perhaps a potential festival organizer might look at it, and based on that picture or that video, he or she might decide that you are not the right person, right, just because of that. So I'm glad that you brought this up, because I was actually gonna ask you about this, about the visuals and videos and pictures. And I also like this idea of a short kind of video presentation or introduction where the artist is kind of really talking to the potential booker or festival organizer, music venue owner. So I think it's a very, very, very good advice, and I'm glad you brought it up. Is there something else when it comes to websites?
I think that, the step one really has to be recognizing that you have multiple audiences that you're attempting to invite to your website, and that these multiple audiences can be broken down into like 3, I think, major categories, and then further categories. And that would be the fans, the media, and the clients or bookers that you want to, eventually buy your act. When you think about that alone, you can begin to understand that each of those audience members, require some different styles of communicating. And that I'm not suggesting that you have like 3 different websites, but I am suggesting that you be mindful of those 3 different audience members when you're doing any website updates, or when you're doing any kinds of changes or making some new tabs that are specifically geared towards those folks. So for instance, a lot of websites, musician websites and artist websites, have this thing called gallery, which is where they post all their photos of recent gigs. And that's a very fan-based item. That's great. Keep that there for your fans. But then for your booking personnel and for your media personnel, be aware that they don't need the photos, tons and tons of photos. They need the 1 or 2 really great promotional photos that they could use in their season brochure, in their advertising, in their press releases, in their articles, previews, and reviews. So just keep in mind what the needs are of the different audience types and have sections of your website designed for those various audience types. One of the biggest things that keeps coming up is that any artist who's about to release a new CD, that seems to be the feature item on their homepage.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm a festival promoter or a booker, and I land on your homepage, I don't want to be sold a CD. I'm not going to buy a CD. I don't even know who you are. And if you've been trying to pitch me to let me book you at my festival or at my venue, and the first thing I see on your website is buy my CD, I'm gone. You've already lost me. So you have to be really mindful of the fact that bookers are not there to buy CDs. Fans are there to buy CDs. So if a fan is going to go to your website, the first thing that they want to see is not buy my CD either. They want to know about you. They want to have a page where they can listen to your music. They want to have a page that they can get to your social media information. But a booker from a festival or a club or any other kind of college venue, whatever kind of booking situation, they want to know you, like you, and trust you that you're going to do well by them in their performance venue.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to not be hit over the head by my CD scenario. And it's really important that artists begin to place those kinds of items on appropriate pages and understand when somebody comes to your website, what do you want the first thing to be that they should learn about you? How are you going to transform a new person coming to your website into a person that either books you, writes about you, or engages with you as a fan? How can you make that transformation? And that's the piece of the puzzle that you have to really think about as you plan how you're going to engage with anybody that lands on that website.
After hearing this, I have $1 million question for you.
Oh, okay.
So get ready.
Do I get the $1 million or do I have to pay you?
Well, let's see. Depends on the answer.
Okay,
So what do you think? What are the elements or element a homepage should have? So it's clearly not a massive buy my CD. What are the things, or what is the thing you think it's good to have on an homepage?
Well, I mean, it depends on who you are that's offering the homepage. I would say if you are somebody selling something, like a product or a service, which an artist is, ultimately they are selling themselves as a product and a service. So, the I think that a homepage needs to be, one, inviting. It needs to be not crowded. It needs to have a single and convincing message about who you are and what you do and what you can do for me, depending on who that me is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to accomplish the fan, media, and booker scenario all on a same whole page, I think the biggest thing that somebody could do is have a good heading, like the name of the act or the artist, and maybe a tagline that describes what it is that the act or artist is doing. Something interesting, something clever, something that I like to say uniqueifies them from every other, let's say in this case, jazz artist. If you're a jazz guitarist, well, what makes you different from all the other jazz guitarists out there?
Mm-hmm.
What can you think of that makes you different? I think a good quote, something that will help differentiate you might be a really good quote from either a media source, a credible media source, and or a credible venue booker source.
Mm-hmm.
If let's say you're trying to release, let's just use the example of trying to release a new CD to radio, for instance, you might design a special page that is just geared to do that. And that's the beauty of having so-called landing pages, where a particular page is just set up just for that one purpose. And that page might have a picture of a CD, a description of a CD, and a description of the artist, and perhaps a bunch of radio DJ reviews. And that will sell that CD. And then, of course, a link to how do you buy that CD, or how do you get a free copy of the CD if you are a DJ or a reviewer. How can you either download it or get a physical copy? And so that would be not necessarily a homepage, but a landing page that you might just send an email to radio DJs all over that you want to introduce your new CD to, and you don't send them to the main website. You just send them to this very specific landing page that is totally set up to do this one thing. So bookers, if you are creating a page for the optimum interaction with a booking personnel from a festival or a club or any kind of a venue, I would create your landing page to be very specific for those types of people. And then when you send an email out, you would not just send them to the home page of your full website, but you would send them directly to this page that you've designed specifically for those people. They can always go back and review any other bit of your website because you'll have the nav bar links to the rest of your website. But you will send them specifically to this one page that is talking directly to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the ways that you could really avoid, having that confusion. Now, if somebody just comes to your homepage and they land on it, I would suggest that you have 3 big buttons that indicate bookers, and however you want to say that, media, and fans, for instance. And so if I'm a fan landing on your home page with a nice, perhaps a video of a really good performance, that then I can click on the fan button and I can get to all the stuff that relates to me, who I am as a visitor to your website. If I'm a booker, then I can click on that button and I can get all the stuff that relates to me. And if I'm a media person, I can click on that button and then I get the stuff that's most important to me. Links to past reviews, links to listening page that lets me listen to any audio, lets me see any videos. So that would be, a way of addressing all of that in a very easy and succinct manner without a whole lot of stuff on the home page, because nobody wants to be really like blasted. You're inundated. And you have to think about, what do you want the person who's coming to the website? What do you want them to do? What do you want them to get? And in order to know that, you have to kind of get into their heads and think about, well, what do they want? If somebody who is booking a festival is going to come to my website because they're looking for jazz artists to perform at the New Orleans Jazz Fest, for instance, and they know a bazillion artists, but what can I offer them that's going to convince them that I could fit in. So they're going to want to see where else you've played. They're going to want to hear some samples and see some samples of your performance. They're going to want to see what else you can offer them. So, can you fit into a workshop stage? Can you be the moderator of a workshop? Can you participate in a multi-performer workshop? What kinds, what styles do you do? So you have to kind of think about, okay, here's these people out there. What are they looking for? And what can I give them?
Mm-hmm.
And make it easy for them to get it.
Yeah, no, it's true, and I think that kind of to sum up what we have talked about so far and what you've said, I think it's really important that the point of thinking about your audiences. So, like you said, your fans, your booking kinds of, and press and media. I think this is something very important, and by starting with by acknowledging this, you can already achieve big results, because like you said, I really liked the example of the artist who has just released an album, and there is this buy my CD like everywhere, very big. And I think that's a mistake that sometimes really drive potential Jets festival organizers or music club owners away, because they like today people don't spend that much time on a website, and
right.
Usually it's maybe 5 seconds that can make the difference between people going more through your website or just going to another website. Now I would like to kind of take a step forward in a way, like we've talked about the website, so how to build a website, by being also aware of the booking, so the way of writing the elements and features to have. And now my next question to you is, what factors should Jets artists consider when they are planning their tours?
Okay, well, this takes into a number of different thought processes from the artist's perspective that I think that many artists, they don't consider. They just say, "Oh, I just need to get some gigs," and then they're off and in a hope mentality. And I think that when artists go through these five different little ideas here, and they think about and understand who they are as an artist, and these various considerations, that it's going to help whittle down the huge, overwhelming amount of potential performance opportunities that are out there, and whittle it down to just specifically what they are either desirous of or appropriate for. So the first one that I always look at is, what are your touring preferences? And the things to consider are, do you want to be on tour 365 days a year, or do you like to just tour 2 weeks at a time and then spend 2 or 3 weeks home? Do you like to go out for 3 months, or do you like to go out for a weekend? Do you have other things that make demands on your time that you need to consider in order to understand how to create your touring preferences? Do you like to perform in soft seat theaters, or do you like to perform in standing room only nightclubs? Do you like to perform at 8 o'clock at night, or do you like to perform in the middle of the day because you're a children's artist? Do you like to perform in schools, or or would you rather perform at 11 o'clock at night to be your starting time and get home at 3 o'clock in the morning? Can you do that? Do you have a kid that you need to get up to school to take to school at 7 a.m.? How does your life impact your preferences for how you'd like to tour? It's not only about, do we want to go by bus or do we want to go by car? Although that is one of the items. Would you rather fly to a gig, or would you rather be in a touring bus? Can you afford a touring bus? Do you need a road manager, or can you handle it yourself? So I think that artists need to really determine a lot of these little nuances of how they prefer to tour, which will help to whittle down the specific venues. Then, when do you like to tour? Number two is like the touring time frames. Are you an artist that likes to tour year round, or that likes to tour only October through, September through November, and then take a big winter break and then tour again in the spring? Are you an artist that only does big summer tours? These kinds of tidbits are going to determine the kinds of places you play. So if you only play summer gigs, then you're probably going to have to play festivals, outdoor concert stages, local communities, and this is fine. There's lots of places to do that. And if you want to determine that maybe you like to tour during the winter months, maybe you should be touring in Colorado and ski resorts instead of worrying about beach resorts, because if you like to do that. So understanding the touring time frames. Now, the third one is understanding the touring regions, because similar to the time frames, if you don't like to tour in the winter season because you're going to have to deal with road conditions and weather factors, then don't tour in the Northeast in the wintertime. and don't tour in you're where are you? You're in Finland?
Yes, here in Finland.
So you guys are all used to touring in the wintertime, but maybe you don't like it. Maybe you'd rather tour the south of France. So thinking about the regions and where it makes the most sense for you. Do you need to be touring in California if you live in Boston? Maybe not. Maybe you've got a very tightly packed Northeast region that offers up tons of gigs, so maybe you don't have to go very far, and maybe you could sleep at home at night most nights and not have to spend a lot of money on travel and gas expenses, because you're in a region that's easily accessed, that has easy access to a ton of potential performance opportunities. So thinking about that is really, really important. Targeting, and then the number 4 is targeting your specific audience. If you know who your audience is, when I ask a question of many artists, I'll say, so who is your target audience and who would like your music, for instance? And they would answer everyone. I know immediately that they have no clue as to who their audience really, really is. And so it's very important to understand who is your target audience. Yes, everyone might like your music, but isn't it much easier if you really understand who your target audience might be, that then it will help you to determine where to play, when to play? If you are, like in the US, we have public radio, for instance, and the audiences that listen to public radio, maybe classical music, maybe even jazz music, are more likely to go to a soft seat performing arts center that starts at 8 p.m. rather than a standing room only club that starts at 11 p.m. And by knowing that, you can immediately eliminate making a ton of extraneous phone calls to the wrong venue. And that is a relief because you're booking specifically. You're going after the right places. And once you know where your target audience prefers to go to see the kind of music that you do, you can then even determine what kinds of conferences you might need to go to possibly showcase that, to be able to reach the venues that cater to those target audiences. So understanding your preferences is so important to making your life that much easier in booking. And even if you do work with a booking agent, by knowing what your touring preferences are, you can relay that to a booking agent who then can do this same thing and only go after the kinds of gigs that you desire and that are right for you.
Hmm. No, I totally agree, and I think it's something that sometimes somehow is not really thought of that much. Like this, what do I want to do as an artist? So, like you said, do I want to be on the road 365 days a year, or only on weekends, or only in the summer? And also, like you said, you made the example of of Colorado or the Northeast of there in the States, of kind of doing a little research to like, yeah, one says, yeah, I would like to, let's say, to tour Northern Europe, but what does it mean?
Right.
What is the difference between touring it during the winter or during the summer? It's a very big difference. So I think that these things you talked about are really important. And also the last point about the kind of the target audience, and the example you made of the press and media members of the press. I think it's a very good point, that sometimes it's really so that they are more likely to be a certain kind of venues at a certain time compared to other venues. So I totally agree. And sometimes I think that I ask myself, and I'm sure that many artists ask themselves, like, how much planning ahead one should do, and also, does planning ahead create more touring and booking opportunities?
Yes, I mean, I have been really promoting the idea of using a 2-year planning time frame,
Mhm.
and part of it is that it allows for all the different types of venue potentials that there are. Festivals, for instance, if you're thinking about a festival, well, right now we're heading into festival season as we're doing this interview. And many of the festivals, they are already booked and they're getting ready to just host their festival. But if you know that you would like to play a particular festival at some point, and you know that they're booked now, by thinking about when they are going to be presenting their festival. Let's say we talk about the Tunder Festival up in Denmark. That festival runs towards the end of August,
Mhm.
but they're all booked now. Their whole festival is set, and now they're doing their marketing. Is now a good time to be in touch with that festival for a booking? No, it's not, because they're not going to pay. They're focused on getting the festival up and selling their tickets. But if you know that the festival is over, at the end of August, that they probably take a little time off to reassess how did everything go. And then in the middle of September, you might want to get in touch with them. Well, you're already talking about next year.
Mhm.
So if you have that 2-year mentality, you can be planning far enough in advance to both take advantage of when certain things take place, whether they be a festival or a booking season, or whether they are conferences that you might want to showcase at, and getting in on early bird conference fees, and making it on time for showcase deadlines and applications. If you think about what you can accomplish in a 2-year time frame and where you want to go, it provides you both with the right time frame for booking the right type of venue, since like performing arts centers always book 12 to 18, almost to 24 months in advance. So if you're calling a performing arts venue in June for a gig this fall, well, you're too late because that gig has been booked a year and a half ago. And so by having that 2-year planning time frame, you're on time for short-term gigs like jazz clubs that book 6 to 8 weeks out, or performing arts centers that book 12 to 18 months out. You're still you're in the loop of what might be happening, and you can be much more focused on driving your career forward when you're thinking 2 years ahead, as opposed to thinking, when am I going to get my next gig in 2 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
Or I need a gig in 2 weeks. Well, in 2 weeks, there's very few gigs that you can get.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I was actually wondering, are there some ways that one can use festivals as anchor dates?
Yeah, like if I was actually just talking to one of my clients just before we talked, and one of the things that's really important is that there are all sorts of festivals. And so the first thing, once you have gone through that 5-item preferences and you understand that there are certain festivals that are going to be just right for you, and maybe there are smaller festivals like community festivals and town festivals, and like smaller regional festivals, as opposed to the big famous ones that everybody wants to play at, that can help you to build your reputation within the genre of your preference. So if there are jazz festivals all over the world. If you target some of the smaller ones nearby your region, within your region, and in Europe there are lots of smaller festivals that happen, whether they are an actual full-out jazz festival or whether they are a festival of a variety of musical genres that a jazz artist can participate in and be one of among many.
Mm-hmm.
That helps to bring recognition to your artistry within a general population, as well as general media who like to write about what's going on within the community or within the region. So if you make a list of the various festivals nearby, and maybe a list of the festivals, the big ones that you hope to eventually play at, that you can begin to look at the communities surrounding that festival, wherever that festival is. Like let's use Tundra as an example. If you were wanting to play at that festival, then other venues and other events that occur in and around Amsterdam and Denmark and Tundra and all the other smaller communities around that that particular festival, you can see what else are there. Other colleges that might have a jazz festival.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other self-promoted type events that are not part of this particular festival, but that are in or around the region where you might be able to get booked, or to target it as something that you want to get eventually booked at? That helps you to build a reputation in and around the area of the larger event that you might want to eventually, be a participant of.
Mm-hmm. And if we think about an artist's own region, is there something that, for example, in this case, jazz artists can do to increase the number of gigs in their own region?
Well, one of the things that I think is really important for artists to do is to look beyond the traditional mainstream venues. So if you're in a particular town and you know that there's a jazz club, on Main Street, for instance, is that the only thing that exists in the community? That the only audience that would appreciate your artistry as a jazz artist? And I encourage people to look at, well, are there college campuses nearby? Are there libraries that have concert series nearby? Are there community festival events in that region? expand your thought process about what makes for a good venue for what you have to offer. You know, are there private events that would be perfect, you know, as far as like conferences or meetings that need a entertainment element? And would your act be appropriate? Would your act, even though you are a jazz act, that it doesn't matter as long as you're presenting the, you know, the kind of music that the specific target audience might appreciate. And then it opens you up to a whole new arena of audience members that are not just the ones that would pay money to go to a jazz club, but that might be gathered for an event that has nothing to do really with music, but that uses music as an element to enhance the experience of the event.
No, I totally agree, and I think it's a very, very good point. And again, sometimes it's something that artists don't really think about, you know,
Right.
looking forward and like go more into deep, like dig deeper, to and not to stop just as the at the traditional, if we can call them, or mainstream venues, but look also for more opportunities. And I really like that you mentioned, for example, libraries with some concert series, or even colleges, this kind of
Or even museums.
exactly, yeah, even museums.
And jazz concerts tend to be jazz artists tend to be some of the more preferred genre of music at some of those kinds of museums and library concert series.
No, that's true. And are there other ways to open new markets to artists? For example, I don't know, gig swaps. Do you think
Sure.
help in a way?
But like what I like to see happening, you know, if you have developed a certain audience in your own community, and you know of another act that is in a community that you would like to play but have no relationship with the community, by offering to host that artist in your community and introduce them to your media and your audience members, and have them do the same for you, that gives you an entree into a venue you might find hard to get, and opens up you to the other artist's audience, and gives the other artist, and even in your case gives you, like, let's say you have a regular monthly gig at a particular venue, and you get a good crowd every weekend, every time that you play, but it's hard for you to get media coverage every time you're playing, because you know it's a regular thing and they've already talked about you. Now all you get is a listing in the local newspaper that you're going to be at this club. Well, if you want to spice up that opportunity for getting the media to write about you by doing a gig swap and bringing in another act that you want to introduce into your community, gives the media another opportunity, a new opportunity to write about the new act while they also feature you in the long run. So that same kind of thing can happen with when you swap and you go to the other person's region or community, that they get another opportunity to have some media coverage because of you, the new act.
So gig swaps is definitely something that artists should really think about carefully, like that it's something really useful.
And when they do that, it's really important to be diligent about laying out how you want it to be handled, you know, because some artists are really good at doing the promotion and making things so that the audience turns up, and other artists are not. So you want to, you know, before you jump into a gig swap situation, you want to make sure you're working with an artist who is diligent about making it become a really good event for both of you.
Yeah, to make sure that you're on the same length with.
I have a really on my website on performingbiz.com. I have a lot of articles that go into detail about many of these things that might be useful, and I also have a weekly Biz Booster hot tip for artists who sign up for them. You'll get a little report that helps you to determine the 5 booking strategies that are useful.
Mm-hmm.
And also, every week I do these Biz Booster hot tips that are all about details in varieties of strategies and helpful hints about booking and touring and marketing and every aspect. I really cover every aspect of an artist's career, even the psychological drawbacks to making phone calls and all of that. How do you get past those blockages from making the career that you really want to have? And that's on performingbiz.com, and you can sign up for those. They're all free, and they come in your little email box or on Facebook and Twitter every Monday morning.
All right, and we will have the links in the show notes. So whenever you're listening, whether you're listening from iTunes or from YouTube, from your smartphone, whatever you're listening from, we will have all the links to the things we've talked about and to performingbiz.com also in the show notes. We have passed the 1 hour mark, so I would like to wrap up this episode. We have talked about so many interesting things. You have given out plenty of golden tips, very useful advice. I would like to give, if you were to give one tip or even a couple of tips when it comes about booking and touring for artists, what tips would you give them? We've talked about the website and the booking section of the website, about the importance of targeting audience, or thinking about the different kind of audiences one might have. We have talked about planning, so what to keep in mind or what to think about when it's time to plan a tour. You talked about the 2 years strategies, the way to use festivals as anchor dates, and then we talked about gig swaps. Is there some other thing that you would like to?
I think the one big thing, the two big things that make all of this possible is really knowing who you are as an artist and what you can do,
Mm-hmm.
what you can present, and be very don't just think just because you play a particular instrument and that's the way you think of yourself, that there's not some more to you. Like, I think that artists don't really dive into all that they really have to offer.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you can think about who you are as an artist and what your artistic, how far reaching your artistic talents can be, that opens doors to new performance opportunities, new audience building opportunities. And I think if there's one thing that is very important, is really knowing deep down what you can do and how much you can do and how you can stretch your talents to incorporate other aspects of your art, and that will open up new doors and new opportunities for performances. And I think that that's one of the most important things, to not sell yourself short.
Mm-hmm. It's very strong statement, but I think it's very true, not to sell yourself short. Definitely. Jeri, thank you so much for being on the show, for your tips. And again, for all those who are listening, this is Jeri Goldstein from performingbiz.com, and she's also the author of How to Be Your Own Booking Agent. So make sure to check out performingbiz.com and to check out her book, How to Be Your Own Booking Agent, on Amazon and other websites. Jeri, thank you once again.
Oh, you're welcome. This was quite a pleasure, and thank you so much for thinking about including me on your podcast. I'm very excited about it.
My pleasure. Thank you. All right, so that was Jeri Goldstein. Jeri, thank you once again for being on the show and for providing us with so much value and tips that I'm sure are going to be golden tips for many of the listeners out there. So last week on episode 12, you heard about how to build and grow an online audience for your music. And today we have heard more about how to effectively book and plan tours. So now it's your time. You've heard the advice, you've heard the tips, you heard about some strategies and call to actions. So now it's your time to take action. Make sure to sit down. Think about a couple of things that you have been doing up until now that perhaps can be done in a different way with some of the things Steve Pelferman on episode 12 and Jeri Goldstein in this episode talked about. And I have one more thing to tell you before wrapping up this episode. From now on, you might have seen that there is a monthly guide on the Jazz Spotlight podcast that talks about some of the top music festivals that are happening all over the world. And so for July, you can find July's guide that features over 50 festivals from San Francisco to Europe, Tasmania, South Africa. If you go to thejazzspotlight.com/July14. This is the Jazz Spotlight podcast and I'm Yanni Lunga. Thank you for listening and have a great day.